My name is Mike Garlia.
And I'm Steve Jones.
When Steps, the Backstreet Boys and Westlife dominated the pop charts, we decided to write a script.
Based on our experiences as holiday entertainers.
It's sat in an attic for the last 16 years. How terrible is the writing? How awful will the acting be?
Only you can help us decide.
This is Bad Scripts.
Hello and welcome to Bad Scripts. I'm your host Steve Jones, and joining me, hosting as always, is the wonderful Mr. Mike Garlia. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Steve. How's your week been?
Yeah, it's been good. It's been good. A very, very eventful. It's very warm. We're talking to you through the airwaves from June 2021, and it's hot. It's really hot. So yes, we are keeping cool as best we can. What about you? How's your week been?
Well, just rub it in. Just rub it in, Steve, because as you know, the Scotland summer lasts about 2 days between June the 10th and June the 12th. And as you know, we are now past that. So we are overcast and rainy. We have a little bit of it sounds like a weather reading now, doesn't it? It's still it's still reasonably warm, but not to the extent that you guys are getting it down in the southern regions, I should say. So yeah, just don't rub it in too much in terms of you guys getting the good weather.
Well, I mean, I don't like it when it gets too hot in the southern regions. Try and avoid that wherever possible. So, Mike, we are back.
If there's a large amount of rubbing.
Absolutely, no chafing here. We are back after an amazing guest special, our first ever video episode, kindly supported by Brian from Be More Super, the podcast, who lent us his amazing technology to be able to communicate with everybody out there. And again, just a big shout out again to Brian, to Dan from bleedingmarvelous.com, and to Dan Fudge from the Wednesday Week podcast as well for joining us. Absolutely incredible guests to have on. What are your thoughts about how that episode went in our first ever video foray?
Well, I'm actually quite worried about this one, because how do we top such an amazing show with such wonderful guests? That was an absolute high for me, and the fact that you and I got to sit back and let them share some stories and anecdotes was absolutely fantastic. Even to give them a platform, which doesn't come along very often, where they can talk about some of their past experiences. How do we top that in a show like this? This is always gonna feel like a bit of a downward spiral, isn't it? So I don't know. We're gonna lift this one up
after the Lord Mayor's show, I think the term is, isn't it? But I think the biggest thing I took from it was the fact that, and we always talk about this in the show, and probably people are sick of hearing it now, but we don't remember the writing process that well for the show. And it was really apparent from some of the stories and the anecdotes that the guys shared with us that we haven't spoken to them in decades, and it's only this show that's brought us all back into contact. Just how many of those anecdotes kind of rang true from the script, and how much of our writing was kind of validated as being realistic, because it genuinely kind of happened. So I found that to be really interesting, uplifting, and in places downright hilarious.
Oh, I think what we wrote was a much tamer version of the reality based on what was shared with us. The one thing I cannot get over, though, and I don't know if you're in this space, I cannot get past the fact that we wrote a character, Margaret in the wheelchair, who was based on a real guest who Fudge ran into, or at least was the recipient of her running into him, completely unrelatable, when he worked in a restaurant. And that has absolutely blown my mind that he had that experience. He encountered that and then related those that experience to the script itself and remembered that particular character.
I know, and with the 12-year gap, it's just incredible, really, to think somebody can have that kind of an impression on you, and you see them. That this is essentially a customer of yours, and 12 years later, that's the impact that role can have on people. Is that they remember you? They remember you for the rest of their lives. There are entertainers from when I was a kid that I still remember the names of. I still have photos in albums from back in the day when we were children and you actually had photos in albums, physical albums. And I still have those pictures, and they were what inspired me to do that job in the first place. And so to think that there's people out there who still remember us from that time, similar to the way Margaret remembered Fudge, it just blows my mind.
Oh, I would absolutely like to put the call out right now that if lady who we based Margaret on, if you are out there and you are listening, make yourself known, because we would love to have you on the show and have a little bit of a chat with you about your perception and your experiences, and of course who your favourite camp coat was back in the day. And but it's also interesting about another couple of things that, especially that Danielle brought up, was the autograph books and stuff. And how many autographs have you signed? Because I've signed a lot, and I wonder, like, these children are now adults, and I wonder if they've still got these autograph books with these unknown people scribbling their names in them and feeling like a celebrity for that length of time.
It's a really weird one, isn't it? Because you would literally have queues of children and sometimes adults with autograph books coming to get them. So you felt like a celebrity in that environment because you were there on stage appearing, and to them you were a celebrity. So and I can recall, and you probably had the same experience. You went into the local town on your day off, and there'd be people shouting across the street to you because they'd come into the town for a day trip, and they were like shouting to you, "Hey, it's you! Hi!" And I had that. In fact, I moved to Nottingham, and I actually had somebody come up to me in the street and address me by my coat name. And that was a really strange experience because you're not expecting it. You're off guard. So it has had a lasting impression. I got fan mail for years. I don't know about yourself, but I got fan mail. And I worked out the other day that some of those people now that wrote that fan mail are in their 30s and are probably quite embarrassed by the fact they wrote it in the first place. But that now, the concept and the thought of somebody writing you fan mail now just seems almost ludicrous, doesn't it, as adults in the position we are. But to them, they idolized us and saw us as, these, like I said before, like celebrities.
Oh, I got some fantastic letters, some really creative ones as well back in the day, where it was like cut out letters from other magazines that were just kind of printed in there that said really nice things like I will kill you, or you watch your back. It was like the admiration there was absolutely fantastic from from those kids. Your face.
I'm not quite sure where you're going with that. Give us £10,000 or we release the photos was probably a better place to go with that one. But no, I get where you were coming from on that one. You know what else it also made me think about was there were a lot of stories that that the guys relayed to us, and those three that were in attendance aren't the only people who have worked in the environment. Yes, there were three people we knew, but there's a lot more people out there who probably listen to the show out of nostalgia because they've done that role or a similar role or worked in that environment. And I know myself and you had a little chat the other day, and we thought, you know what? Wouldn't it be good if we could speak to some more of those people? So, Mike, do you want to put that call out right now and ask?
I think that's a really good idea. So, and you're right, Steve. So, thank you for that wonderful reminder. We would really love to hear more stories and more anecdotes and more experiences, and I think our audience would like that too, based on the caliber of our first three guests. So, if you're a listener to the show, whether you know us or whether you don't, and you've had some kind of experience in that particular industry, and we're going to keep it contained to the British holiday industry just for now, please give us a shout out. get in touch with us through Instagram, through Twitter, through email, and we would love to have you on the show. If you've got something to say or you want to share your story, please do. And we could start procuring these stories from across the years. There are hundreds of people, thousands of people out there with something to say, and everyone has a unique, funny story or a situation. And if that's you, get in touch, and we'd love to have you on the show as a guest and talk to you about that particular time of your life, and you can get that and inspire other people. So that's the call out. That's the shout out. We've got a couple of people already lined up who would like to appear on the next show, so we'll get those organised, and more information will follow on that one, because we've reached a bit of a point now in the podcast where there's not really much more to cover in Last Resort Season 1. I don't know if you feel the same, Steve.
Yeah, 100%. We've read through the script, we talked about it. There's the opportunity for us to do an unedited version of it, where we get people in to do the voices of all the different characters and things. And if that's something you'd like to hear, again, drop us a message, because we'd love to hear that, and that's something we can do as a sideline to things. But it'd be nice to move things on, and maybe consider something we could do with the characters to understand them a little bit more in depth. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Mike. Is there something that we could do now that will give our listeners a little bit more of an insight into the background of our characters?
Well, I think you call this a mid-season pivot or an end-of-season pivot. And what we are going to be doing going forward, starting from next week actually, is covering off our main characters' favourite movies. And we're going to talk about what the movie is. We're going to watch the movie. We're going to do a little bit of a mini review of the movie. And the review will come from, as always, two perspectives. It will come from our perspectives, and it will come from the perspective of the character itself, whose favourite movie it is. So if you've got a bit of an idea of who you think the favourite characters are, the favourite movies of the characters are, let us know, and we'll take that into consideration. We've already got one that we're going to start with, and it would be lovely as an audience, as a listener, is if you too watch the movie prior, and we'll tell you all about it first, and each episode will lead into it, and then we'll watch the movie and we'll come back and talk about it, and we could get some really interesting selections in there.
Absolutely. So our first character that we're going to be doing it about is one of the lesser known characters in the script, a guy who goes by the name of Dan the Man. And Mike, if you could just give all of our listeners now a quick sneak peek, the name of the movie that we're going to be covering next week, so they have the chance to watch it between now and then.
Well, Dan's a bit of a lad, and as all kind of lads were growing up in the 80s and 90s, he was a big action aficionado. The Schwarzeneggers, the Stallones, he would mop all that stuff up, as we all did back in the day. But I would say that Dan's favourite character actor would be the Muscles from Brussels, and that is Jean-Claude Van Damme. And his favourite film from Jean-Claude Van Damme, any guesses, Steve?
I toyed with Time Cop and possibly Street Fighter, but you could have one Van Damme, or you could have two Van Dammes. So let's put everybody out of their misery. What is that movie?
That movie is none other twin brothers who get reconnected after being separated at birth by the name of Double Impact.
So make sure you check out Jean-Claude Van Damme and Jean-Claude Van Damme in Double Impact before next week's episode, where we're going to talk about it. We're going to get Dan's opinion on the movie, and we just hope that you enjoy it and have as much fun watching and reviewing it as we do. So, Mike, we could call to end this sort of mini episode that we've done today. Is there anything else you wanted to talk to our listeners about before we head out?
No, just to say thank you for continuing on with us, and we're going to be bringing some new and exciting episodes really around the movies as we begin to write season 2 of Last Resort. And we're also in discussions around doing something a little bit different at the same time as well. So this is just a little mini placeholder just to kind of, you as the audience, let you know what our plans are and where we're going with this one, because we need a little bit of time to put our creative juices to work and start creating the next season of Last Resort.
So, Mike, you put it perfectly there. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in again. And we will be back next week with Jean-Claude Van Damme, Dan, and Double Impact. Until then, take care of each other. And we'll see you next time on Bad Scripts.
Bye-bye.
Bad Scripts was written and performed by Mike Garlia and Steve Jones, a Beach Tide production.